Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of my best and worst palettes from each brand. I did this video, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, and got so many requests to do a drugstore version because that one was all about my favorite and least favorite high-end palettes from each brand. So today we're doing drugstore. I can also do this for like indie brands if you'd like to see something like that with like Juvia's Place and Ace Boutet and Nabla. Definitely let me know down below. But today I'm just going to be focusing on brands that are commonly found at the drugstore or at Ulta that are more on the affordable side. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. And why don't we start with Maybelline since it's right in front of me. My favorite Maybelline palette by far would have to be the Nudes of New York. This palette is so amazing and I was not expecting to like it because I really haven't been a huge fan of Maybelline's formulas in years past. I felt like the Lemonade one and I think was it called Soda Pop, those were okay and I felt like the formula was getting better, but this one just blew everything out of the water in terms of the pigmentation and the blendability. It is such a wonderful palette, and it also is a really close dupe for Soft Glam. I believe I showed comparison swatches either here or on my Instagram page of how close they are. I mean, really, really similar. This is also a pretty close dupe for the new Too Faced Born This Way Natural Nudes palette. It's just a really gorgeous everyday neutral color story. So I think that's what I really love about it. In addition to the formula, I just love the colors. So I hope that they continue with this formula and maybe just do some other color stories that are, you know, a little bit more fun, a little bit more interesting. But I am glad that they did a neutral palette since that's definitely what I usually go for. And then I would say my least favorite palette from Maybelline would have to be this Burgundy Bar one. I love the color story. I was really excited about this when it first came out, but I rarely ever used it, and part of that is because it's almost all shimmer shades. You only have 2 mattes right down here, so for me it lacked the versatility in the finishes, and then it also was just kind of a funky formula. I felt like it always looked really muddy when I tried to do looks with it, and all the colors just sort of blended together. And I also felt like it just didn't stick around, like it blended away. When I tried to blend it, it faded on my eyes super fast. So out of all of them, I would have to say this one was probably my least favorite. Next up we have Milani, and I'm sure you guys know what I'm going to say for this one. It's the Soft and Sultry palette. This has been my favorite Milani palette now ever since it came out. I just love the formula. I love the color selection in here again. I know it's super boring, it's neutral, but that's what I wear more often than not. If I could only pick one palette from Milani to keep in my collection, it would definitely be this one because I wear it so much. I'm actually wearing it on my eyes today. In addition to the amazing formula, I just love how it has so many neutrals. It has a cooler toned vibe to it. There's a couple warm tones in here, but I also really love cool tones, and I feel like even though they kind of started to become trendy, cool tone palettes are still a little more difficult to find. So I reach for this one constantly. There was a point when I first got this that I only used this palette for weeks on end and I didn't use anything else. I kind of got into a rut just using it, but I just love it that much. So I actually just ordered a backup on Milani's website because I'm thinking I'm probably going to hit pan on some of these shades pretty soon, which is very rare for me with the eyeshadow palette collection that I have. So this one, it was pretty much a no-brainer. I knew I was going to pick this for my favorite. And I would say my least favorite is this Gilded Pastel palette. This one just came out very recently, like I want to say last month. They came out with like 6 different Gilded palettes, and the Gilded palette formula is not my favorite, as you guys have probably heard me mention several times, just because, again, kind of like the Maybelline one, this formula, especially the matte shades, seem to just kind of blend away on the eyes. They don't have a lot of staying power, and when I apply them, I feel like they apply nicely at first, but then as I blend, they just kind of blend away to nothing. I feel like I have to keep adding and adding. Now, if I layer more of like a tacky primer underneath, that definitely helps the situation, so I've been able to use those palettes with a primer underneath with a little bit more success, but I feel like this pastel one, and a lot of pastel palettes are like this for me, it just looks very chalky. The colors hardly show up, and I have a pretty fair skin tone, so pastel palettes are never my favorite usually. If I had to get rid of one in my whole collection from Milani, it would be this one. Alright, so then next up, let's talk about e.l.f. So this was another really easy choice for me, and I would pick the Earth and Ocean palette if I could pick one from e.l.f. And that's because this palette, again, has so much versatility, and even though I'm not the type to pick a colorful palette usually, I I fell in love with this one. I did a video when this first came out with I think 4 different looks using it, and I just had so much fun because there's so much that you can do with this palette. You have like some grayish blues on one side of the palette. You also have that gorgeous turquoise shade. You have some greens on the other side and some earthy tones, some browns, some taupes. It's warm tones, it's cool tones. It kind of has a little bit of everything, not to mention that the formula on this is really, really good. I feel like e.l.f. has stepped it up in recent years, and I really truly enjoy all of these 18 pan palettes that I have. I think they're really beautiful, and I just feel like the other two that I have a little bit more common shades that I have a lot of in my collection. So if I could only pick one, I feel like this one is the most unique and the one that I would definitely get the most use out of. And then when it comes to my least favorite e.l.f. palettes, I would have to say probably it's this Nude Rose Gold one. I feel like these palettes were okay, but then once they started coming out with these, they're so much better that looking back, I don't like these as much as I did in the past. But I mean, this color story in particular is not my favorite. I think the Mad for Matte ones are really good, and I think I would put those maybe like a step above this one. And the reason being, for me at least, is that this palette just skews very, very light in color. Most of the palette is just very light shades, and usually I like a little bit more variety, a couple of light shades, maybe a few mid-tones, and then a couple of deeper ones. And in this palette, you really have all these light shades and then some mid-tones, and that's it. So I just felt like all the looks I did with this palette looked really kind of pinky and light and all the same at the end of the day. So if I had to pick a least favorite to get rid of, it would probably be this one. It's not a terrible palette, but I would say it's just my least favorite. Okay, so next let's move on to Rimmel, and if I could only pick one from this line, it would have to be the Jewel Rocks collection, just because this one is a little bit more unique again. I feel like it has a beautiful kind of southwestern vibe. You have these gorgeous golds down here that kind of in a way remind me of the Urban Decay Naked Honey. You have gorgeous greens here, and then one at the end. You have kind of rusty colors, some blues. It's just really a beautiful mix of shades, and nothing is super bright either, which again is what I tend to go for if I wear color. So I think because of the uniqueness of this one, it's a little bit different than like the Spice Edition, which I also really like that one, but it's very similar to a lot of other palettes in my collection with all the warm tones. A lot of the other ones in the collection are just very basic, but this one just really stands out to me because of the gorgeous, really unique colors that are in it. And my least favorite would probably be the Rainbow Edition. Now this one's also a really colorful one, but because it's more bright colors and there's some pastels, which again, I don't really love the most. So this one is definitely the one that I would reach for the least. Not to mention, I feel like the formula on this one is a little hit or miss as well. Some of them are better than others, but this one, I think some of the pastels again are a little bit more lackluster. Some of the deeper purple shades are a little more patchy. So out of all the color stories in this collection, if I had to get rid of one, it would definitely be this one. Next up we have Colourpop, and I did a video a couple weeks ago now shopping my stash for all my favorite neutral palettes, and I talked about the Bare Necessities as being one of my favorite neutral palettes in my collection, and I got so many comments like, what about Going Coconuts? Because you guys know I love this one. I talked about it a lot, and I really, really do love this one. I think it's a beautiful, gorgeous neutral palette. I think the tones are just perfect for me. But if I could only pick one Colourpop palette, and there's so many that I love, like Good Sport and Double Entendre and You Had Me at Hello and the Disney Princess. I mean, there's so many good ones, but if I could only pick one, it would have to be Bare Necessities because it just has all of the versatility, and I feel like this is a whole bunch of Colourpop palettes in one. Like you have a lot of the shades that are in Double Entendre, not exactly, but like similar. You also have the Going Coconuts shades in here, like somewhat. You have some of those rosy tones that are in You Had Me at Hello. So I think like just thinking about it that way, that if I could only have one, this one just gives me the most, and I could work with this one the most. I could do lots of different looks out of it, whereas a lot of Colourpop's palettes kind of go around a theme. Like if you think about, you know, Sweet Talk, for example, you have a lot of just like coral looks that you can do with that, but that's about it. Or like You Had Me at Hello, you could really only get like rosy looks out of that one. So this one I think is just the most versatile, which is why I would choose this one as my number one. And I would say my least favorite is probably the Disney Villains Misunderstood palette. I've talked about this like when I did Colourpop Colourpop ranking videos, this one is always at the bottom, and I kind of feel bad because when I look at the shades individually and when I look at it swatched, it's absolutely gorgeous. Like, there's some really beautiful colors in here, but the reason that I never reached for this one is because it's almost all shimmer shades, and I just like more of a variety of mattes. And I also kind of feel like this one is a little bit disjointed in a way, like it doesn't really have a theme. And usually, like I said, Colourpop has like a theme usually to each palette where you kind of feel like the colors all go together somewhat, or they form like some sort of a cohesive story. But with this one, I just never knew what to really do with it because the colors are just all over the map. I mean, you have like a couple of greens, a couple of blues, a purple, a gold. It's just kind of all over the place. So I think that's probably why I never reached for this one, that and the lack of matte shades. So if I had to get rid of one of my Colourpop palettes, I would say it would definitely be this one. Next up, when it comes to BH Cosmetics, my favorite would have to be Love in London. You guys knew I was going to pick this one because I've talked about it so many times, but I just love the formula of these. First of all, I think their travel palettes are like one of the best formulas they've ever had. Also, just the color story in this one, it's mostly cool toned. You also have some gorgeous warm tones in here too, and I just use the heck out of this palette. I love it so much. The shimmer shades are super foiled on the eye. They look beautiful. The matte shades are that perfect mix of like being really blendable, but they don't blend away. They have great staying power. So this collection in general has been a big hit for me, but in particular this one because of the color story. And then if I had to choose my least favorite, it would probably be the Aurora Lights palette. This is one of the baked formulas that they have, and don't get me wrong, I love their baked formula. I think it's actually incredible, especially if you use them wet. They really come to life, and they just are like super foiled, super metallic on the eyes. They're absolutely gorgeous, but because I have both of the Zodiac palettes that also have the baked formula, and those also include matte shades, they're just a little bit more, again, versatile for me than this one, which doesn't have any matte shades at all. So I just felt like I didn't reach for this one all that often, except for when I first got it, and I always found myself dipping into another palette to get a matte shade for my crease. I know you don't have to use mattes in your crease, but it's just what I prefer. So that's the main reason I didn't reach for it, and also just because this one's a little bit more on the bright side, which again are not really colors that I go for all that often. So even though I think the formula of this one is really good, I just hardly ever used it, so that's why it's my least favorite. Okay, so moving on to Wet n Wild, I would say my favorite Wet n Wild palette in my entire collection is actually one they don't make anymore, and that is the original Comfort Zone. This one, I just feel like even though they redid this palette, it's not the same. Like, these shadows are so beautiful, they're so smooth and just absolutely gorgeous, and I do appreciate that they added 2 transition shades to the new one, which this one is definitely lacking, but there's just something about this formula that beats the new ones hands down. I don't know what it is. Tell me if you guys think I'm crazy, but I just love this palette so much. But out of the new ones, I like the Comfort Zone, and I also really love my Glamour Squad, which is a really close dupe for Soft Glam. I did like a Wet n Wild dupes video a while back and swatched it next to Soft Glam, and it's like almost shade for shade exact. So if I had to pick one of the new ones, it would probably be this one. And then my least favorite Wet n Wild palette in my collection is this one called In the Smoke. Even though it's the same, technically the same formula, it just, I don't know if it's the colors that they used, but these were so patchy. And I think that this one was part of like a Halloween collection. They came out with this and 2 other ones. And for some reason, I just felt like the formula of those 3 Halloween ones were not as good as the originals, and particularly this one. I felt like this one was the worst of the 3. And it may just be that the grays and the reds are a little bit harder to formulate maybe. I don't know what it is, but for me, I just never reached for this palette. I swatched it and then I tried it once on my eyes, and it was just so patchy that I just kind of threw it in a drawer and forgot about it. So definitely my least favorite. Alright, so next up we have NYX, and NYX is a brand that I feel like nobody ever talks about anymore. Even though they were super popular. At one point they were one of my favorite drugstore brands, but then all of these other affordable brands kept popping up and they kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. But I do still really enjoy the Perfect Filter palette. This is the Golden Hour one. It's really beautiful if you love neutral palettes. I just love the color story of this one. I think that the formula is really good. NYX can be super hit or miss, but this one was amazing formula wise. These, I remember them being like really expensive at the time. I want to say they were like charging $20 for it, and back then that was pretty much unheard of when it came to drugstore palettes, and I remember so many complaints on social media about it. but the formula was really good. Like, they definitely stepped it up. And also from this line, I really enjoyed the Olive You one too. It was so hard to choose between them. I think I still probably use this one a little bit more, but Olive You was beautiful too. It kind of has that subculture vibe, and it's colorful, but it's like more muted earthy colors, so I really like this one as well. And then when it comes to my least favorite NYX palette in my collection, definitely it would be this Ultimate palette. This is the Smoky and Highlight shade. These Ultimate palettes weren't the best to begin with, but for some reason this cool toned one, I was super excited about it when I saw it because I thought, you know, it's cool tones, it's definitely my vibe, but it was so patchy and streaky and not pigmented. I just had so much trouble with this one, and it just like blended away on the eyes. It was super powdery. So this one will definitely get decluttered because I never ever reach for it. All right, and then last but not least, we have Makeup Revolution. So Makeup Revolution's palettes have always been really hit or miss for me, but there are some of them that I really enjoy so much. I really love their Reloaded palettes. I think they're awesome, especially for the price. I love some of their chocolate bar palettes, the Maxi Reloaded, the big one. That one I was almost my number one because I feel like, again, kind of like with the Bare Necessities palette from Colourpop, it's just so much variety. I feel like you can't go wrong if you could only pick one. But the one that I picked is probably going to surprise you because I haven't talked about it all that much, but it is a beautiful palette, and it's the Wild Animal Courage palette. This one is like the best formula that Makeup Revolution has had to date. Now, I know I've talked about like the Forever Flawless ones being good, and they are. Those are really awesome, but this one is like on another level. The matte shades are just like super velvety. They feel like high end, and the shimmers are just like out of this world, creamy and buttery. I haven't tried any of the other ones from this Wild Animal line, but this one just spoke to me, the color story. I love how it has a great mix of just easy to wear neutrals, but you also have a pop of green in there, and you have some cool tones, you have some warmer tones, some berries. I mean, there's a lot of variety just in this one palette. So I think if I could only keep one, it would be this one, just for the color story and also because of the awesome formula. And funny enough, my least favorite palette from Makeup Revolution looks almost exactly the same on the outside with the leopard print, but this one is the new neutral palette from Makeup Revolution Pro. And this one I think was supposed to be like a dupe for the Huda Beauty New Nudes, but it does have a few different colors in it, so it's not an exact shade for shade dupe. But I was expecting so much more out of this palette because it's their Pro formula, but it really is not good. Like, I just felt like it was lacking in pigmentation. I felt like the matte shades were super patchy and chalky, and some of the shimmer shades were really difficult to pick up. So overall, I used this palette like once or twice, got frustrated with it, and then put it in my declutter pile. So I'll definitely be getting rid of this one, not only because of the formula, but also because there's just so many of those new nude dupes out there at this point, and so many of them are better than this formula, like the Alter Ego one, or even the other Makeup Revolution one from the Forever Flawless line. I felt like that one was actually a really nice formula, and it's a closer dupe for Huda Beauty's New Nudes. So this one definitely gets a no from me. Alright guys, so that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and also I would love to hear from you guys down in the comments below. Let me know what your favorite and least favorite palettes are from the brands that I talked about today, and if you'd like to see an indie version of this video, definitely let me know as well, and I can put that one together. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button in the corner of your screen, and I'll see you all in my next video. Take care guys. Bye!